యూట్యూబ్ కూడా ఓపెన్ చేసి యూట్యూబ్ Yes, namaste to everybody. Very good morning. Welcome to the online celebration of the 22nd Foundation Day of Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence. And today being September 11th is the 128th anniversary of Chicago addresses of Swami Vivekananda. It's a two-in-one program, very interesting program, very inspiring program. A national level online youth conference on the message of Swami Vivekananda and the relevance of the Chicago addresses. We shall commence with chanting of the mantras, followed by an opening song on the message of Swami Vivekananda, and then present to you the Foundation Day video of VIHE, followed by the recitation of Swami Vivekananda's teachings of the Chicago address. Then we have the guest lectures by Dr. R Bala Subramanyam joining us from New Delhi, and Sri Untitled Chapter also joining us little later from New Delhi. स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। यथाग्नेर्दाहिका शक्ति रामकृष्णे स्थिता हिया सर्वविद्यास्वरूपां तां शारदां प्रणमाम्यहम्। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे तेजोसि तेजोमयि देहि वीर्यमसि वीर्यं मयि देहि बलमसि बलं मयि देहि ओजोसि ओजो मयि देहि मन्युरसि मन्युं मयि देहि सहोसि सहो मयि देहि। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। सर्वस्तरतु दुर्गाणि सर्वो भद्राणि पश्यतु सर्वसद्बुद्धिमाप्नोतु सर्वत्र नन्दतु। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः। स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ। तच्छंयोरावृणीमहे गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तुर्द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु। Now we have the opening song on the message of Swami Vivekananda, Veera Senapati Vivekananda. The call of Swami Vivekananda, who is a warrior monk. So, Mr. Advait Roy, the vocalist, one of the students of VIHE and accomplished musician from Hyderabad, accompanied by Anirudh Sharma on the tabla, on the pakavach. Enjoy the song, concentrate on the meaning of the song, and participate nicely.
वीर सेनापति विवेकानंद आज पुकारे हैं, आओ रे आओ, उनके दिल की सुन पुकार, उनके दिल की सुन पुकार। महारथी कई आए रे आए, वीर सेनापति। स्वार्थ त्याग के अग्नि मंत्र से हुए हैं प्रेरित नई दिशाओं में। स्वार्थ त्याग के अग्नि मंत्र से हुए हैं प्रेरित नई दिशाओं में। त्याग कर सब सुख धरा के, त्याग कर सब सुख धरा के, दुष्ट शक्ति का नाश करो रे वीर सेनापति। वीर सेनापति विवेकानंद आज पुकारे हैं, आओ रे आओ, उनके दिल की सुन पुकार। महारथी कई आए रे आए, वीर सेनापति। हे प्रभु तेरे चरण दास हम लेकर आए हैं, जन्मों की प्यास हम। हे प्रभु तेरे चरण दास हम लेकर आए हैं, जन्मों की प्यास हम। तन मन धन कर तुमको अर्पित, तन मन धन कर तुमको अर्पित। तेरे आशीष हम पाने को आए रे वीर सेनापति। वीर सेनापति वीर सेनापति विवेकानंद हुए जे डाकी छे आए रे आए आओ भाने तार आपना भूलिया आओ भाने तार आपना भूलिया कथो महारती छुटिया जाए वीर सेनापति विवेकानंद आज पुकारे हैं आओ रे आओ उनके दिल की सुन पुकार महारथी कई आए रे आए वीर सेनापति वीर सेनापति वीर सेनापति।
Thank you very much, Anirudh Sharma and Advait Roy. Can you all encourage them, appreciate them, and two accomplished young musicians from Hyderabad. They have been connected with the Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence since a couple of years. So Veer Senapati is calling you. That was the call which Swami Vivekananda gave 128 years ago in Chicago, and also after his return from Chicago. Young men of Madras, my hope is in you. Will you respond to the call of the nation? 50 years of the country's future is waiting for you. That was his message, that was his call. And it is the responsibility of the youth, responsibility of the parents, responsibility of the institutions to participate in this building a resurgent India project. So now we go forward in knowing what exactly the Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence has done, is doing, and will do in the future.
नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरये सच्चित् सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे मूर्तमहेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् मूर्तमहेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् वन्दे वेदतनुमुञ्चित गर्हित कामकाञ्चन वन्द्यम् वन्दे वेदतनुमुञ्चित गर्हित कामकाञ्चन वन्द्यम् मूर्तमहेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् कोटिभानुकर दीप्त सिंहमहो कटितट कौपीनवन्तम् कोटिभानुकर दीप्त सिंहमहो कटितट कौपीनवन्तम् अभिरभिहुकारणादित दिन्मुख प्रचण्ड ताण्डव नृत्यम् अभिरभिहुकारणादित दिन्मुख प्रचण्ड ताण्डव नृत्यम् मूर्तमहेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यम् कृपा कटाक्ष प्रेक्षण मघदल विदलन दक्षं भुक्ति मुक्ति कृपा कटाक्ष प्रेक्षण मघदल विदलन दक्षं भालचन्द्रधर बिन्दु वन्द्यमिह नौमि गुरु विवेकानन्दं भालचन्द्रधर बिन्दु वन्द्यमिह नौमि गुरु विवेकानन्दं मूर्त महेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं मूर्त महेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं वन्दे वेदतनुमञ्जित गर्हित कामकाञ्चन वन्द्यं मूर्त महेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं मूर्त महेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं वन्दे वेदतनुमञ्जित गर्हित कामकाञ्चन वन्द्यं मूर्त महेश्वर मोज्ज्वल भास्कर मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यं मेष्टममर नरवन्द्यम्
Yes, that was the journey of the Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence, which completed 21 years of dedicated service to the society, entered the 22nd year. From today onwards, tomorrow also there will be a very inspiring and a very dynamic celebration. And today you are watching the 128th anniversary celebrations of Swami Vivekananda's Chicago addresses. Okay, so we have to look at the parameters from a different viewpoint and participate in these such programs. There's something deeper, something bigger, and all of you and your parents and the stakeholders, the teachers, the government, and anybody else who is involved in this national regeneration project, as far as their education is concerned, the future of the nation is concerned, we have to take a big leap forward. For that, training from the Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence is very, very important, and it plays a very key role in self-transformation, youth transformation, leading to the national transformation. There is one corner in the universe that you are certain of improving. That is your own self, said Aldous Huxley. There is one corner of the universe that you are sure of improvement. That is your own self. So when my mind, when my emotions, when my character becomes better and pure and focused, I think the society and the nation would become better. All of you and all of us together should strive for that concept of human excellence. So now we have the recitation of Swami Vivekananda's Chicago addresses by one of the volunteers and the students of Bhavan's Vivekananda College. If just a minute, please. Ms. Suruchi Pandey, if you have joined, please come online. in whatever name you have joined, please. Yeah, Suruchi Pandey, are you there? Okay, we'll look into that little later. And now we move into the next part of our program, which is the guest lecture number 1 by Dr. Bala Subramanyam from joining us from New Delhi. And I invite Prashanti Vinod, our volunteer leader, to introduce Dr. R Bala Subramanyam for the audience.
Am I audible, Maharaj?
Yeah, you are.
Namaste and pranams to Maharaj and to all of the dignitaries who are present here and to all my young friends, sisters and brothers who are here. It's an absolute honor to welcome Dr. Bala Subramanyam sir today. Yeah. Having embarked on his journey in the development sector by living and working for several years among remote forest-based tribal communities in the southern Indian district of Mysore, Dr. R Bala Subramanyam is a widely respected development activist, leadership trainer, thinker, and writer. After his MBBS, he earned his MPhil in Hospital Administration and Health System Management from BITS Pilani. He has a master's in Public Administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard University. His living habits were greatly influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, and at the age of 19, he founded the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement based on the principles of Ahimsa, Satya, Seva, and Tyaga. He was the head and visiting professor of the Vivekananda Chair, University of Mysore twice. He is currently a visiting professor at Cornell University, USA, and at IIT Delhi, India, where he teaches courses on leadership and human development. He was a member of the technical group set up by SEBI for setting up the social stock exchange in India. He is currently the member HR in the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India. He has authored 7 books, both in Kannada and English. More about him and his work can be looked at drbalu.com. Extremely glad and happy to have you here today, sir, and over to Swamiji.
Yeah, Dr. Balu, namaste. Welcome to the webinar.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Yes, Dr. Balu, you can.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. Thank you for inviting me to participate in such an energizing event.
Yeah.
The day itself is such an energizing day for us in different ways, and then to celebrate it along with the foundation day of the Institute of Excellence is a double bonus. For people like me, Vivekananda just doesn't represent an icon. I think it's very difficult to even describe what he means, and I'm sure for most of us today, for all the young people in this audience, and everybody else in this audience, describing Swami Vivekananda would be simple at the same time an extremely complex exercise. So I thought for the day, keeping in mind the extraordinary significance of, I would say, bringing aloud and visibly his message to the world at Chicago. Now, it's fascinating that even the Art Institute today on its website has Swamiji, his message, and the celebratory proclamation of the day and what it means to them in the United States even. So I think it's not just we in India who understand and celebrate his message, but I think the world over increasingly are going to be recognizing the depth and the enormity of what Swami Vivekananda brought to this world. So I would like to share what I see of Swamiji and what would he mean to me today. You know, like September 11th comes every day, and in a fascinatingly, I would say, in a fascinating way actually, every single year when I sit back on this day and start thinking about how would I interpret this message, strangely, every year I find something more deeper and something more different. So it might possibly be very difficult for us to say, this is what Swami Vivekananda might have meant. You know, we can easily just look at the words, the 3-4 minutes of his speech. We can all spend hours talking about this one sentence, Sisters and Brothers of America. Or we can all talk about the enormity of the significance of the message of universal acceptance and tolerance. Or you can talk about his love of Hinduism. There's so many ways you can see his message. So what I feel in my particular case is every year, as I try to understand Swamiji and this message a little better, a little deeper, I realize that somewhere deep down, I think Swamiji and this message has not altered. Swamiji might have meant exactly what he meant in 1893, in whatever was on his mind. But I think our ability to understand Swamiji, our evolution, maybe our antennas are getting more refined. We are able to see him in dimensions which are extraordinary. And as we evolve, possibly even our very ability to process and reflect on Swamiji's message, I think, expands. And therefore, his message looks every time a little different, at least for me. But how would I see his message today? Beyond just the semantics, beyond just the extraordinary grasp of English that Swamiji had, in a very deep sense, for me, it was, on one side, the cerebral message of Swami Vivekananda himself, the enormous intellectual gigantism that Swamiji represented. But in the same stroke, if you look deeper, the enormity of emotions that Swamiji carried in this way he expressed his love for this great country and saying he represented a country of so extraordinary significance. He represented a religion of such enormous depth and significance. So in one perspective, you can see his intellect shining forth. On the other side, you can see the soft, gentle, motherly emotions that comes out. On the third perspective, you see the hard, strong, philosophical nature of Swamiji and that is explanations. And there is also, in one sense, the desire, the enormous urgency in which he communicates his message to the world and says, before it is even too late, we all need to understand the significance of the oneness of mankind itself. And I think what was so relevant in 1893, we, because of our inability to learn and understand and appreciate this message, and if we do understand this message, our inability to live this very message, we make his message all the more significant and relevant even today. Today, if you look at the world and the persecution that society is undergoing at all levels, if you look at the iniquities that the world today manifests itself in, if you look at the conflict situations that we create and mostly man-made, I think Swamiji and this message today rings so strong and so necessary, and it is as urgent and as important as it is today as it was in the times of Swami Vivekananda. But more importantly for me, Swamiji in that message, and then subsequently, if you look at his entire next 9 years of his life, I think the Chicago address is sort of the gentle window through which many of us can start peeping into the enormous, complex, divine force called Swami Vivekananda. Reducing him to a personality or a person, I think would be unjust. You cannot describe, it's so difficult. Somebody asked me to describe God. The description can only be limited by my experience of that understanding. And to people like me, and just trying to appreciate Swamiji, I think it is like that, peeping into a window and describing infinity that you see inside. And for us, the Chicago address is exactly that. What Swamiji gives us is a little peep into the window. And we need to go deep into the depth of his message. And as we travel, the journey will never end. And that is the beauty of his message. And that is why we can never come to a point where we say, now I understand Swami Vivekananda. At least I feel one lifetime or even several lifetimes might not be enough to even unpack the 9 active, engaged years of Swami Vivekananda's life that we know post 1893. And so understanding him will be, I would say, we should not even spend time in that, but beginning to understand him is what we should spend time. So for me, what I saw in that message of Swamiji, in that little few words, and then subsequently in his life, and that's what I like to share. Like I said, entering that house called Vivekananda and trying to unpack him little by little. The depth of his convictions not just in the religious underpinning of the Vedanta and the Vedantic message. Conviction not just in the spiritual oneness of man that you are so urgently trying to proclaim. Convictions in the fact that inequities of society at that point of time and as relevant as it is today should be addressed. Conviction in the fact that young people have to take on as a mandate, as a responsibility of ourselves. How do we constantly think and worry and lose our sleep over the masses and do something for them? Conviction in the extraordinary beauty of combining emotion, cognition, and action. When he says heart to feel, head to think, and hands to work, how powerful that message was. Convictions in the concept of servant leadership. Even before the rest of the world even decided to coin that word, Swamiji had used that word. The powerful message of not just tolerance, tolerance in Swamiji's ways of just one beginning of a journey, but leading on to the idea of universal acceptance, not just of religion. Today we just bring it down to religion. But I think if you go deep down, acceptance of every way of life, acceptance of every different perspective, whether it is dress or clothing or food or boundaries or countries. Convictions in the nationalistic boundaries of India and Swamiji and the boundaryless existence of humankind itself. What a beautiful concept. For others, it could have been so paradoxical. How could somebody believe so strongly in being Indian and still love the whole world? And Swamiji represented that extraordinary gentleness that he could show, along with the sternness that he could manifest. Now, there is so much of message that we can see in him. Reducing him to a mere youth icon, again, like I would say, is just a starting point. But beginning from there and expanding him into understanding why he might have asked us to take care of the concept of Tyaga and Seva. You know, how he was so beautiful in connecting the idea of private gain with public good even so many years ago, where he understood that India as a nation could not progress without the energy of young people. And it is relevant today because into the 75th year of our independence, well, the whole country is celebrating the Amrit Mahotsav. The celebration of Amrit Mahotsav would not be complete without celebrating the message of Vivekananda every single day, not just this year, but every year of this country. Swamiji was so clear in his thinking that in this idea of living this message and making this country what he dreamt it to be, that is the way we would become a Jagat Guru. Our Jagat Guru is not simply a message that we take to the world, but the immersive experience of the life of oneness that he asks us to live with everything around. That is the beauty of Swamiji's message to the whole world. And I think young people today, it is time to pause and reflect. How can we align this message of Swamiji to the very need of this country? And I think that is a speciality of Swamiji, where he spoke about several things, and I'd like to share a few. The understanding of how we need to evolve from the control of our internal nature. Today, what the world needs to understand is not power over somebody. It is not one nation's power over somebody or one person's power over somebody. If you truly understand Swamiji's message, it is about the power over ourselves or the power within ourselves that Swamiji spoke about, the internal nature that he spoke about. What our young generation needs today is to appreciate this concept of understanding internal nature as much as they go and thrive in the world of the external nature. Today, the COVID scenario has demonstrated the appreciation of this. Now, I keep interacting with a lot of young people, both my students and otherwise. I realize COVID is not just a milestone in health. It is not just a significant public health challenge, but what COVID taught us was the fallibility of man, was the vulnerability of man, was man who constantly believed in his own competence. The arrogant understanding of what he could achieve was reduced to exposing him to what he cannot achieve. And that is what I think we need to really go deep down. And if you look at the way the world played out, the biggest challenge our young people faced was the challenge of how to deal with themselves. And that is why today, if you look at it, the amount of mental health problems the youth of today have experienced in the last 18 months is extremely significant and frightening. And if only we had understood Vivekananda's message of how do we understand and appreciate the control of internal nature, I'm sure this kind of a mental health epidemic would not have been what it was, what it is today. So I'm moving ahead in this message and its relevance, finding a purpose, his convictions in transacting our existence as an expression, our desire for an inner spiritual evolution to manifest as a desire for external seva. What a powerful idea. He gave a new dimension of the understanding of spirituality itself. Atmano mokshartam jagat hitayacha. In one sweeping way, he made us understand that our evolution without the appreciation of the elevation of the masters of the mankind is irrelevant. On the other hand, he said our evolution should be the result of our expression of service to the outside world. And that's a powerful need of the day, is also the need of the hour today. If we really want to bring meaning to 75 years of our existence as an independent nation, India is timeless and ageless, but it's a political entity as India. If you want to really bring meaning to it, I think the real meaning starts when we can really celebrate our spiritual freedom, our inner liberation as an external manifestation of ensuring that no Indian goes hungry. Like Swamiji's words, he said, not even a dog should go hungry. What a powerful way of understanding the very expression of seva itself. And in this process, he spoke about the enormous tyaga. And tyaga, even when I understood it, I thought initially in my days of the work I was doing with indigenous tribal communities in the forest of Mysore, I thought giving up urban life, giving up all the physical benefits of being a doctor in a city, that was great tyaga. And I think that is a very narrow interpretation of tyaga itself. With evolution, I realized that is not the tyaga Vivekananda must have meant. Possibly, as I started getting to understand him deeper and deeper, it is the tyaga of the very concept of I am doing something. It is the tyaga of the enormous drive to express yourself and be visible. The tyaga of the fact of saying that I am somebody important. That very understanding of the I and the mind and transcending that very idea and going ahead and saying we are instruments of that powerful divine force. It's very easy to intellectualize this, but trying to live it and trying to become insignificant, but at the same time being significant, trying to be absent while at the same time being present, I think that is sadhana by itself. And Vivekananda showed us that if you really want to be useful, do some karma for India. But if you really want to be something extraordinary, convert the karma into karma yoga and become insignificant in this process. It is not easy, my young friends. I think today is a day for us to understand this powerful message of Swamiji, because embedded in this message is not just the outer expression, but the inner evolution. And the tyaga is as much important for the inner evolution as seva is for the outer manifestation. And this is one extraordinary way of understanding him. And most of the time, when we think of September 11th, we reduce Swamiji into an intellectual giant. But deep down, if you scratch the surface and go beyond the depth of his speech that he gave that day, you will possibly understand the expansive humanism that he represented. What an extraordinary combination. Today, either some people are driven by the gigantic intellectualism and they stop there. Or some people are so driven by the concept of that maternal, gentle, compassionate existence of caring for human beings or humanity as such. But finding this extraordinary combination of both in one single person or personality itself is a fascinating idea. And I think we need to see what element of that can we replicate and understand and immerse ourselves into. So to me, what the country needs today is not just the message of Swamiji and his extraordinary thinking, but going deeper, living the life and message of Swami Vivekananda himself. So if we are to really celebrate the message of 1893, I think we have to understand that there is a Vivekananda waiting to express itself within each one of us. Finding that expression is a real way of understanding Swamiji's message today. What India wants today is not a mere imitation of his words, but the powerful expression of his existence within each one of us. Now, this is what is a revolution that organization like the Ramakrishna Mission is doing, especially centers like the Center for Human Excellence. It is not just a training program or a webinar or a session or a speech. I think these are opportunities for us to wake up that inner Swami Vivekananda in us and get him to express himself in ways in which only magic can happen for India, and not just for India, for the whole world at large. Because in this expression, we will not stop at one level. And how does that seva itself manifest is what something we have to spend some little time on. Swamiji's way of expressing seva was so in a simplistic way, was incremental. The easiest expression Swamiji asks us to do is the physical seva, daihika seva, sharirika seva. When we say seva, it looks very, we always think that giving up something and going and sitting in a forest or, going and living their life in a slum is seva. That maybe is one way of looking at it. But Swamiji's way of expressing it was so beautifully evolutionary. He said the least you can do is worry about the other human being, the physical nature of the body, because all of us cannot experience the oneness just because we talk about it. It's very easy to see the other. It's very easy to difficult to become the other. So when you see the other and the challenges and the difficulties, can we relate to the other, relate to their suffering and do something for the human body? The hospitals we build, the old age homes that we construct, or the orphanages that we run could be expressions. Why? Simple things like picking up the paper on the street, that little trash that we throw, telling ourselves we will not throw it on the streets. That is also national service. We have to understand national service from multiple dimensions. National service is not something where you come to Delhi and become a minister or something like that. Even every small act that we are doing, if we can bring this element that some human being somewhere is going to benefit by it. In a very small, even taking a thorn or a nail from the road and putting it aside. Some small thing like that, even. It's also national service, that physical act. But then that's easy for all of us to do. So we don't have to read Vivekananda and understand this complex message. We can just start living Vivekananda by the simple act. In one of my books, I write, and this incident happened outside the Ramakrishna Ashram in Mysore. I used to go every evening there, walking there. There's a traffic light close to the Ramakrishna Mission. And I was standing there waiting to cross the road. And I never even, we are all so busy with our lives. It's very strange. And sometimes when our inner noise is so loud, we don't seem to hear the outer noise at all. So maybe I was going through that phase on that day, and I never heard a little baby crying. A 2-3-year-old child was crying. And suddenly when possibly the crying became loud, or when my inner noise became less, I heard the baby crying. I looked at the baby. And I saw that she was possibly alone. Her mother or nobody, no adult was near her. And around 2-3 feet away from the crying child was a woman who was selling bananas on the street. And that is when I noticed she was in a heated argument with the fellow who was trying to buy the bananas. In India, we have this strange paradox. You walk into a mega store owned by a billionaire, you'll simply pay the price that the label says and you buy it and come. But you go to the roadside poor little street vendor, you would like to haggle and take every little profit that the vendor makes back to you. If you go to that big Reliance store, we don't mind paying water paper stuck on that label, and we pay 20 rupees, 30 rupees, 40 rupees for 3 bananas and come back. But here this fellow was trying to say, give me 4 bananas, and she was trying to say 10 rupees, 3 bananas. So this argument went for some time. It was very fascinating. So much that I stopped even crossing the road as watching what will happen. Human nature is fascinating. And finally, this lady, this elderly lady in disgust shouted at the customer and said, I will not sell my bananas to you. You are not even worthy enough of being sold the bananas. Go away. That fellow walked away. Then this lady also noticed a child crying. 1 minute ago, she was refusing to give that extra banana, 4 bananas for 10 rupees. But the very next minute when she saw the child crying, unhesitatingly, she plucked 2 bananas from her. And I had also seen the child crying. And in my mind, the first thought that came was, this child is alone. Who is this irresponsible adult who has left this child alone? That is all I thought about. And some vehicle will come and have an accident now. But for her, That's the beauty of that extraordinary, expansive humanism that I spoke about in that woman at that moment of time. That mother in her plucked the 2 bananas, gave it to the child. 1 minute ago was a transactional loss if you gave 1 banana. The next minute was an expression of divinity in giving those 2 bananas to that baby. And she's sitting outside the Ramakrishna mission. And in all my curiosity, I asked her, have you gone inside the ashram? Have you heard of somebody called Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Swami Vivekananda? And she had no idea. But without even hearing about them, she was actually living the message of Atmano Mokshartham Jagati Dharaja. She was living the message of Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. And that one instant, she was awakening the Vivekananda inside her. She did not have to even get into the Ramakrishna mission for that. Without even that, she was living that message. Now, this looks like a small incident to all of us. But there are hundreds of opportunities for every person, young or old, to manifest this Vivekananda in very expressive forms of just the caring for the other, recognizing the divinity in the other, and trying to do something about it in a physical sense. And as we become better and better at it, we will elevate ourselves. We will grow and we'll become a little stronger, a little better, a little purer. We become like that, the constant purification that keeps happening. And then we become eligible for what Swamiji says, the Baudik Seva, intellectual service that we can do. From the Sharirik Seva, we evolve into doing something little more elevated, which is driven by the growing purity in us, the growing energy in us, the growing power within us. The more we unpack that power within us, the more expressive it becomes. And then the tools we run, the awareness programs that we conduct, all that the Center for Human Excellence is doing, all these are expressions of that same. But then Swamiji talks about the next level of service. And in my earlier days, I had interpreted Swamiji's message as, somewhere I have to go do the Adhyatmik Seva. Now I realize maybe that is not what Swamiji must have meant, or maybe I am understanding Swamiji differently today. I realize the Sharirik Seva and Baudik Seva is reasonably easier to do. That is what I have been doing for the last 35 years. But then the moment I say I am doing it, I am losing my capability to do the third service, Adhyatmik Seva. What Swami Vivekananda meant was when the Seva and the Tyaga of the I gets combined with the Seva that you are doing, then the real Adhyatmik Seva happens to yourself. That ability to transact Seva as a physical or a cognitive change in the outside world. You develop and if you convert it and transcend the sense of I am doing it and start seeing yourself as an instrument, an extraordinarily refined instrument that the Lord is using, then I think we start doing Adhyatmik Seva for ourselves. So it is not about Seva for others. I think the Seva happens to oneself is what I have started to understand Swamiji today as. So in Swamiji's own way, I think we now need to go back and refresh our understanding of this extraordinary force. Like I said, limiting him to just an expression of a statue or a photograph, it's just a representation. But this enormous idea, this force within us, where this force expresses itself as something for good of mankind and something which makes this world more peaceful, more harmonious, more prosperous. That is what he might have meant as universal acceptance, where we accept everything as it is, where we are even able to accept ourselves as we are. Now, I find it very strange. We all struggle to accept the outside world. But what we actually have to struggle first is to accept ourselves as we are. Today, young people spend a lot of time on labeling themselves. I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, I have mental problems, I'm not this, I am that, I am this. Half the time we are worried about what we are not. I'm not beautiful, I am fat, I am thin, I am short, and all these labels we give ourselves. I think the real journey that Swamiji must have meant, the easiest beginning of the journey of universal acceptance is first my own personal acceptance of myself. Before we start showing compassion to the rest of the world, if we can start showing compassion to ourselves, that is a preparation for showing compassion to others. So accepting ourselves with all our inadequacies, with all our flaws, with all our defects, and not even seeing them as defects, is a beginning point of transcending those defects. And maybe that is what Swamiji must have meant. Can we start our journeys that way? That is the beginning point of sadhana in Vivekananda's terms. He just uses seva as an instrument for refining ourselves on the inside. And I think I've spoken enough about it, but my way of looking at it is this is what the country needs today. The country today is suffering from a moral vacuum. The country today is suffering from having the leadership that can be embedded with these concepts. The country today is absolutely in seek of people whose capacities, not just the intellectual capacities, but the humanistic capacities have to be part of their lives. And this is when Swamiji becomes so relevant. If you truly want to understand Vedanta in Swamiji's language, he said practical Vedanta. I think maybe this is the way to begin that. And we have to use the 75 years of India's independence as possibly a symbolic, I wouldn't say beginning. Many of us, I think in our own ways have begun, but a symbolic strengthening of this idea and go ahead in life, looking at every single opportunity that we can give ourselves. And that is what gives us meaning. I know it might sound very ideological to tell young people to give up everything in service of the nation. And I am not going to make that foolish, impractical mistake. All I'm asking you is take care of yourselves. Swamiji always said, seva on a full stomach. Take care of yourselves, build your capacities, build your abilities. But remember, you're building all this for the others. And like Swamiji's own language in the letter to the Mysore Maharaja, when he says, the vanities of life are transient. Now, we cannot explain the transience or the vanities of life to younger people today. There are too many distractions. There are too many attractions for people to say vanities are going to be transient. It's difficult to understand. But the second part is easier. He says, he alone lives who lives for others. So if you want to become that person full of life for ourselves and for this country, the real expression of that life is living for others. And the rest are more dead than alive. What India in the 75th year needs is this enormous life-filling force, this enormous life-giving, life-generating ideas of Swami Vivekananda, where we'll take care of ourselves, understand that private gains are okay, but that is not the end. That's only a beginning. Private gains for public good. Constantly thinking about how do I build myself in every possible way for doing what Swami Vivekananda wanted. And that is what life is all about. And that is a life, my young friends, we all have to live. Time is short, like Swamiji said, and it is time for us to give up our lives for a great cause. And what greater cause than you can find for combining your inner evolution with your outer expression of national good. That is the message that we have to give to every young Indian today. And together, let's build a nation that we can all be proud of. Let's give ourselves the future that we deserve. And in the world imitating what we create, we become the living embodiment of Swamiji's message of Jagat Guru that India needs to become. And we will take this message of oneness to every nook and corner of the world by just showing how to live it. We don't have to even say that Vivekananda told us this. By just living his message, the world will understand how powerful Swamiji's message is. So on this day, let's rededicate ourselves to everything Swami Vivekananda stood for. And let us promise ourselves that every day of our lives, there'll be a small piece of our lives that we'll unpack. I remember, before I conclude, that extraordinary book that was written about Swami Vivekananda by Elena Stark. She said, A Gift Unopened. That's what is the title of the book, where she says the United States had received this powerful gift in 1893 called Swami Vivekananda. And in her research, historical research, as a historian, she found that America became a nation in real expression post 1893. And in that book, she writes, if Christopher Columbus can be credited with the discovery of America, we must credit Swami Vivekananda for the discovery of the soul of the land of America. What a powerful way of saying this. Now, America is discovering Vivekananda. It is time for us to discover and unpack Vivekananda for India and Indians to begin with, and then the rest of the world will follow. So thank you so much for this opportunity, for sharing some of my thoughts. Swamiji and this message is something so fascinating for me that if allowed to talk, I never know when to stop. Luckily for me, Swami Bodhamayanji has told me what time to stop, and I will stop as on time, and I'll be happy to answer one or two questions that you might have.
Yeah,
So
thank
thank
you very
again,
much.
Swamiji, for giving this extraordinary opportunity, not just to be part of this wonderful event, but to give myself a reason to again and again reflect, think about, and ask myself, how can I live this message better and better and better? Namaste. Thank you all.
Namaste, Balaji. As usual, you have hit the nail right on the top, right on the right place. As Swamiji said, find the truth in the right place. You have given your practical ideas, which you have been doing last 40 years. And it is up to the youngsters have to be motivated, have to be chiseled, should I say, to become ambassadors of our culture and ambassadors of his own vision of a new India, of a new culture, evolve themselves. So some very wake up the Vivekananda in each one of us. That's a very important point that you have observed. Just we'll take a couple of observations and questions from our participants. Before that, let me just, on behalf of others, would like to know what exactly is this capacity building mission that, or the commission which the Pradhan Mantri has initiated, and what is your role and how are we going to take this capacity building mission in, say, in the next 365 days?
Thank you, Swamiji, for asking this question. I think this capacity building commission is an extraordinary evolution of the Honorable Prime Minister's thinking. If I were to use his thinking and use it in one sentence, it is sort of getting our 20 million or 2 crore Indian public servants at every level. Everybody saw the Honorable Prime Minister believes every one of us, every citizen, in fact, is what he believes, has an obligation to take this country to build this new India. Swami Vivekananda gave us a call to build a new India. And the Prime Minister sees that new India emerging not sometime later, but right now. And we all being a part of this journey of building this new India. And one of the things he feels is to build this new India, every one of us need a new skill set. The world is evolving so fast. The evolution of growth, whether it's a $5 trillion economy or ease of living that he talks about, or citizen-centric governance, all these are powerful understanding of or expressions of the new India. And if no Indian should go hungry, and if whether you have a ration card in Kashmir or in Kanyakumari, you should be able to get your food grains and have a full stomach. These powerful ideas need a special set of skills for people to deliver on. It's very nice to draw out those aspirational goals that he draws about, but he also understands that we need to build a team to deliver on that. The Capacity Building Commission's mandate is important because in his language he says, how do we move the government structure and government public servants from living a rule-based existence? You walk into a government office, you're told 100 rules about how to do things or how things cannot be done for you. But he says that is not what India needs. What India needs is for public servants to understand that they have a role. Their role is to build this new India. And how do I participate in this role of delivering to the vision of building a new India? So he says, move people from a rule-based existence to a role-based approach. He talks about moving people from feeling that they're a karmachari, who are just there to do a job and take a salary, to becoming a karma yogi, using public service itself as opportunity for inner growth. It's a very powerful idea. So driven by the civilizational values of India, driven by the Indian ethos, he wants our civil servants, public servants, whether it's an IAS officer or a Group D person in any office, to see this as an opportunity for the national service is an opportunity. So he says Seva Bhav is what our people have to do along with skills. It's not just the mind skills to do a particular job, but to have the mindset of Seva, the Karma Yogi concept. And this is extremely powerful. This is what Swami Vivekananda stood for. It is in essence bringing the spirit of Swamiji and this message into the idea of public service. And that is in a short way, if I were to explain, that is what the Capacity Building Commission is. To endow the public systems with this capacity of seva. And by doing that, I am confident India will be an extraordinarily different country. It's already becoming and evolving into that. I'm an eternal optimist. I can see the winds of change blowing quite fast. And if you add the tornado called Vivekananda, if you add the cyclone called Vivekananda to this message of the Prime Minister, I think we will truly be a world that can be, country that can be emulated. And we will be the leader of nations, which will spread the message of this kind of approach to humanism. That is what the Capacity Building Commission is all about.
Yeah, Balu, I've got a small observation to make. We talk about the infrastructure, we talk about the employment ratio, the GDPs, everything, whether it's from the government point of view or whether it is the institution and the industry. But somewhere we are not insisting or the heaviness on the building up the character, which you know very well, which our institutions are working on, human excellence in other places. How do you place that in the priority list of the capacity building?
Highest, Swamiji. That is
Yeah.
what the Prime Minister believes. He says this man-making, character-building message should be the top of the list. You do that, the rest will follow. And that is a mandate for us. Capacity building is not on teaching them digital management or teaching them how to do big data management. That will also come. You need that. But the topmost is making them feel that this is what is most important. How do you bring back ethics into everyday life? How do you bring back the morality of public service? How do you bring back this understanding what exactly you said, Swamiji? That sharpening the inner character. And I think that is a top priority. And as the member of the HR of the commission, my mandate is to constantly appreciate how do you do this in transactable environments. Because many times we all say values have to be lived. But we have to emulate some of the values that the Prime Minister lives and talks about, and then see how do you transact it down the line? How do you make it spiral downwards to everybody? And we're constantly searching for it, whether it is value education right at the school level or what kind of work that Institute of Human Excellence is doing with young people. We have to learn from all of these experiments, or whether it is our Delhi ashrams working with Kendriya Vidyalaya teachers. There's so much to learn for us. And how do you bring all that into the space of training? So we have more than 750 training institutions of Government of India there. And we're exploring how do we make this the top priority. And after that, everything else will happen. So you're right, Swamiji, the focus is man-making and character building.
Yeah. Just today morning, I was just intensely thinking, due to the economic crisis, the health crisis, and the hospitality industry, somebody told me nearly about 2,000 hotels or restaurants in Chennai alone were closed because there was no business. There's no particular, whether even La Meridian in Chennai is in for auction because there are no customers. The traveling has reduced, working from home has increased, and the banquet halls are empty, the conference halls are empty. And I was just, probing over this matter, at the social level, whether it's the waiters, the cooks, the drivers, and all are left home. They've gone back or they're going into some other field of work. But then the pressure is there in the mind, somehow I have to survive. Then it may lead to a social crisis. It may lead to crimes. It may lead to some other malpractices. How do you think Swamiji would fit in here, or the training of the working class people can be balanced? How do you think the message can go there?
Swamiji, I see this as this. I would see it as an opportunity for the expression of Daihika Seva.
Yeah.
As much as I'll give an example, Swamiji. Close to 80% of people in that class that you're describing, whether it's our migrant brothers and sisters, or whether it is the people who are dependent on industry which is driven by travel, hospitality, and all this. Most of them have been reduced to becoming poorer and poorer in the last 18 months. That's the truth, and we have to face it.
Yes.
But the other counter is, you will not believe this, Swamiji, just two people in the world, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, have expanded their wealth many times over. So there's a very strange world we live in. The inequities of the world are, we have had people who have made 10 times the income they would have made normally in 1 year. And we have had people who have lost their income so much it will take another 10 years for them to even go back to pre-COVID levels. So this is the time for that humanism of Vivekananda I spoke about. This is the time for us to ask ourselves, when I have more than what I need, can I start looking at what others don't have? So it is not that looking at what I need alone, but what others are not having, and then taking care, seeing this opportunity. So I can give any number of examples where a lot of people have actually lived this now. They're all unnoticed people. It is not the big philanthropists I'm talking about. They are the ones in the newspapers. But I know any number of people, even today, simple things like one person I know in the streets of Lucknow, I think, if I remember the place correctly, goes on his TVS moped with a big basket of buns,
Yeah.
goes around the entire city giving buns to dogs because he feels human beings somehow will survive, but the animals are not having food because they don't have food that the human beings are giving to them. So many such expressions of kindness, so many such expressions of compassion and sharing that the world is seeing today. I think these are opportunities. This is as much as it is a crisis for economic growth. I think it's also a time for us to reflect that maybe that is the wrong narrative of development. It is a time for us to understand that the narrative of GDP growth is just one way of looking at it. But what India had was enormous investments in human and social capital that had expressions of economic growth. But reality was investing on people. And that is why I think this crisis was an opportunity to seek those kind of lessons and see how to live them. I think this is the time when we have to really look around ourselves and worry. Like yesterday, I'll give a small example. One person came to me and said her husband has lost a job. Can we do something about it? For that person, it's a shattering of their lives. For us, it could be just another statistics. But can we bring in that compassionate outlook to capitalism and say, how can that person also be taken care of? Instead of saying that I'm paying my domestic help 2,000 rupees, can I start asking myself, if I can spare 3,000, can I recalibrate and give her the 3,000? Because we are always equating and looking at what they bring to the table. Can we reframe the equation of what can I bring to the table and make sure that the other person benefits? So I think this is the time, Swamiji, like I said, to live this message of the other. My concern for the other has to find expression today. And this is a passing phase. And once it goes, so that is the capacity we need to build first. That sense of compassion and kindness. Make this economy a soulful economy. Make this economy compassionate. So I would say the time for compassionate capitalism is what COVID has taught us. And if we can bring that back, the problem that you explained possibly can be mitigated in the future.
Yeah. We'll take an observation from our volunteer student, Vishwanath ji. Your observations of this talk and a kind of thanks on all our behalf. Vishwanath Bhumi can be unmuted. Yes, Vishwanath, you can unmute.
So again, Pranam Swamiji, again, Namaste, Balu sir. Again, it's very heart-touching speech. Again, again, the way you have expanded the Vivekananda's image to a symbolism to how transformation can be brought to this youth, for the country, not only for ourselves as a country, India as a country doing a serve for the world. Of course, first we have to serve ourselves. So we have to feed our stomach. So our country itself has a lot of property. So again, you have shared the great ideas, and sometimes it feels like, are we doing enough? I think it's not only about the feeling. I think it's you also aroused that the spirit and strength within us. It's a time we should start act decisively.
Yeah.
So I wanted to leave it there, and thank you for all your energy, and it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Balu. Very illuminating. And I hope the youngsters and college students and youth from different parts of the country who are participating in this webinar today, tomorrow would derive much knowledge into it, not just inspiration or motivation, but real action. Whether it's sweeping the streets or whether it is meditation or whether it is the higher management skills. I think we need to mold them, we have to work on them and give them the required training. Okay. So we have one of our volunteers who has raised her hand. You can unmute and speak, please. Last observation. Then we'll go into the next part of the program. Yes, you can unmute and speak.
Namaste, Maharaj. Namaste, sir. It's wonderful to hear you today. So I was very happy listening to your speech because being a volunteer in VIHE, whatever you have told today, Swamiji's idea of Tyaga and Seva, the inner evolution and outer expression, this is what we exactly experience while volunteering. And I felt very fortunate and blessed. All our volunteers who are present here, we exactly feel the same. And pre-COVID times when we used to physically volunteer, and when we are volunteering online now, we try our best to keep the same thing in our mind. That is how we are trained in VIHE. So just a small doubt I had while I was hearing your speech, sir. I just wanted to ask, like you said, at various stages of life, we understand Swami Vivekananda in a different way. Like we come across various experiences. So our way of understanding Swamiji's message changes. So at that time, we come to a point where we have to unlearn particular thing and try to relearn. So what homework do you do to understand and practice that, sir? Can you just share few points?
I have a simple message I tell myself.
Yes, sir.
Constantly ask yourself, can I come to terms with my incompetence? Never ever believe that I'm competent. The more incompetent you feel, so learn to operate from zones of your own incompetence. The more incompetent you feel, not in a negative way, the more self-doubts you have, the more self-inquiry you practice. The more self-inquiry you practice, you can only do that if you're humble. If you're willing to tell yourself, I don't know. The moment you say, I know, I went to Harvard, I learned a lot, and all this kind of knowledge, that we start falsely believing in our own abilities as we acquire more qualification or degrees or fame or name. I think we need to tell ourselves, I don't know. And that should drive you to say, I should get to know. So feeling humble, feeling hungry for knowledge, and being in constant search. In simple ways, what Guru Maharaj says, as long as I live, so long do I learn. If you start living that, I think you don't need anything else. That's all I can say. All messages are there in Guru Maharaj and Swamiji's words. We have to find it, that's all.
True, absolutely right. Thank you very much, Balu. We have another, if you have heard of Anshul Chaturvedi, Times of India.
I know, Swamiji. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, we will listen to him after 5 minutes, after we have a small recitation of the Chicago address by one of our youth volunteers from the Vivekananda College, Chennai, Hyderabad. I request Suruchi Pandey to recite that inspiring lecture of Swamiji on 11 September 1893, which is so fresh today and which is so thoughtful even after 128 years. Over to Suruchi Pandey, please.
Namaste to the respected dignitaries and all the attendees present. This is Suruchi Pandey from BBA 2B of Bhavan's Vivekananda College, here to deliver Swami Vivekananda's Chicago address of the First World's Parliament of Religions held on 11 September 1893. Sisters and brothers of America, it fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of the mother of religions. And I thank you in the name of millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sect. My thanks also to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. I am proud to belong to the religion which which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. I will quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn, which I remember to have repeated from my earliest boyhood, which is every day repeated by millions of human beings. As the different streams having their sources in different paths, which men trade through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to thee. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time has come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Suruchi. That has been a very powerful presentation. Thank you for your effort, and Swamiji's blessings will be on you. And you have the talent and the know-how to become a great citizen of the country. Go forward, march on till you reach the goal, till you develop yourself and build up a resurgent India. Thank you very much once again for your time, and hope to see you tomorrow also.
Yes.
So that was Suruchi Pandey, the second year student from Vivekananda College, Bhavan's Vivekananda College in Hyderabad, and their entire team of faculty members, the principal, the chairman have collaborating with us since the last 20-25 years to impart these human excellence values for the younger generation. So can you imagine that these words were spoken 128 years ago, at a time when we were under the British colonial rule, and we have seen the world celebrating birthdays of personalities, birthdays of various leaders. But today is the only day on which a speech is being celebrated. The address, which was just about 3.5 minutes, 128 years. The world celebrates the historic and cyclonic address of the Indian monk that washed away the all religious fanaticism. But unfortunately, in one of his speeches, the Pradhan Mantri pointed out that because the 9/11 of 1893 is not recognized or is not taken seriously, the 9/11 of the terrorist attack in United States took place. Today is the same day, the anniversary of the Twin Towers blast, the attack over the Pentagon in America. So the day which marks the resurgence of India's revival is 11 September 1893, and we are commemorating this event along with the 22nd Foundation Day of Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence in Hyderabad. So let us think about the ideas which Swamiji has given us. And I now invite our volunteer, Sandeep Vashisht, who is joining us from Bangalore, to introduce the next guest speaker, Sri Anshul Chaturvedi. Sandeep?
Am I audible, Maharaj?
Yeah, you are.
Pranams to everyone. Pranams to your Swamiji. As we all know, just now Swamiji said, today is a very special day, the day which marks the resurgence of Bharat's revival. Along with this, we are also celebrating Foundation Day of VIHE. On this special day, we have a special guest with us, Shri Anshul Chaturvedi, National Editor, The Times of India Metro Supplements. Anshul Chaturvedi has been writing and editing as a journalist for some 25 years. His research towards managerial theory, the philosophy of Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, and life of Subhash Chandra Bose are commendable. As an associate editor with the TOI, he has so far authored 3 books, of which the latest, titled The Vivekananda Handbook of Everyday Living, released this June. He began reading about Swami Vivekananda when he was 16, began writing about him in his 30s, and now in his 40s, after about a decade of thought and effort, he finally has managed to put this book together that looks to bring Vivekananda from the zone of reverence to relevance. It is not a religious book, but a philosophical one that addresses our everyday challenges and not the mysteries of universe. He describes Vivekananda as the Dale Carnegie of his youth and the Stephen Covey of his career rolled in one, and then much more, and attempts to explain how Vivekananda's clarity of thought dispels much of the hesitation and ambiguity that we sometimes coexist with as if it is inevitable. We are honored to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. And I welcome on stage onto the platform Shri Anshul Chaturvedi, joining us from New Delhi. Welcome, Anshulji. Thank you.
Swamiji.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaskar.
Nice seeing you for the first time in our program.
Yeah.
Maybe it would not be it would be something bigger, something more interesting in days to come. We need you, and the youth also need your share of wisdom, experience. So I just like to say to the youth and faculty members, our volunteers, that I have become a fan of Anshul the day I heard his interview in YouTube along with Suhail Seth, and I've purchased nearly 3 copies of the book already, and I've distributed to some of our people. And I recommend strongly, even without listening to Anshul, you can take it from me. That book will be one of the best, that gift that you are going to give yourself on 11 September 2021. So it's an inspiring book. It is not just a philosophical book. It is a book which can give a new punch and a new vaccine, should I say, in modern language for the youth of India. So without delaying much, I request Anshul Chaturvedi ji from New Delhi, Times of India, to share his views and then interact with our audience. Thank you, Anshul ji.
Thank you so much. So, when you are talking to a group like this, which already consumes Vivekananda, and like many of the students said, we volunteer and we understand the point between out expression, etc., etc. The point is that when you walk into a place like this for conversation, to give you some spiel about, what the man was about and what he thought, all of that is switching to the converted. And I wouldn't take your time by reiterating for you what you already know about him. Also, I would start with the disclaimer that I'm not a scholar. I used to call myself a student at a certain point, saying no more, because I only study what matters to me in my syllabus, so to say, of my life. I don't know the rest of this subject, be it physics or psychology or whatever. And over the years, I have moved from that, saying I'm a student to saying I'm a practitioner, because there is no point studying somebody like him if you cannot play it out in your daily life. And so the mind space I have approached Vivekananda from, not consciously, not deliberately, not as, as a validation, oh, this person has, a great, profound hierarchy or stature of his mental, emotional space, and, he might be able to train me, but accidentally, involuntarily, naturally, and like 16 onwards, and I'll come to that. I'll stick to most of my observations from that phase, because what I'm learning at 40 is maybe not relevant to the students right now. But why I sort of have stuck with him from 60s till my late 40s might be relevant to you, that, it's not something which is a passing phase or a fad. And the only disclaimer I have, because I was also listening to the previous conversation, my confession is that my pursuit is very extremely selfish. My pursuit is not the grander philosophical, ideological, nationalistic universe which he also inhabits. Because the collective goals of a system or society or structure and my individual goals may or may not always match. I mean, like Suruchi just read out his speech, right? Now, and then Swamiji, the next 5 minutes later says, you know, had they listened to that, maybe this wouldn't have happened. 9/11 then, 9/11 now. Because even if a man as evolved as Vivekananda stands up and talks about a topic, and he said, you know, well, he spoke about bigotry, he spoke about fanaticism, he spoke about a few things, and he said, I hope that this is the death knell of these sentiments and these things in the space I'm addressing, maybe in America, maybe in India. But 120 years later, surely even Vivekananda, from wherever he observes the universe, would understand that it's not that the fanaticism has gone from any part of the world. So the collective goal, sometimes it becomes so aspirational that you see it to be out of reach, and then you watch and you disengage. My parallel for this is, you know, if I have a physical fitness book coming from Arnold Schwarzenegger or Dara Singh, it's good to look at, but you know, it's so out of my league that I may not even engage with it. That will I get there? No, that's difficult. So I want something which I can do. I want something which will help me right now, without me being a preacher. Like, oh, I learned it, I'm coming back to teach you. No, I haven't learned it. I still try to comprehend things each single day. And so the book, for whatever it's worth, the book is a journey starting at a point where all of life's teen insecurities and, you know, that stage where you're figuring out, do I believe in death? Do I believe in religion? And you start off almost by saying that, no, I'm an atheist. Because at a 14 or a 15, religion comes to you packaged as something which is very orthodox. It comes to you as more about, you know, what day of the week to do what to wear when, what to eat, when, how, what not to eat, which day. And as a teenager, our teenagers slightly cocky, slightly arrogant, I'm assuming it comes with the age, I couldn't make much sense of it. And so I began by, you know, saying, okay, I don't believe in all of this. This means nothing. This is not, I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. And you don't know what the word means, but that's how you start off talking. On the other hand, you have this large, you know, repository of questions. You have lots of fears. And obviously, the first fear is the fear of death. And that's a question which has troubled me from the teens. Because when you read science and you say, okay, this star somewhere is, you know, X light years away, 70, 80, 90, 120. And the first thought you think is, you know, that light from that star, if it starts the day I was born, by the time I'm dead, it must not reach the earth. Is my life that brief that light can travel from there to here in my entire lifespan? And then you get a different sense of, you know, like how people who are scientists, they sum up the entire time span of the world from the Big Bang Theory till now. And so I was watching Cosmos some weeks back, re-watching it basically for a reference point. And then I have this perspective of time that, you know, and so we used to think when I was 16 along these lines that, okay, if you say that, you know, between Big Bang and now, you compress time into 1 year, human writing, human effort, human literature is in the last 10 odd minutes of December 31st. From 1st January till December 30th, man is not even relevant in the history of this space. And from that space, I would have this dilemma that, you know, people tell me about what God is, but people didn't exist till the last half an hour of December 31st. So when dinosaurs were marching around the earth and our ancestors were living in caves, they didn't make churches or mosques or temples. So did God not have shelter then? Once we began learning how to do things and talk about it and write about it and build stuff, we also wrote about God and built things for God. But I have to assume God preceded man and he did not need man's benevolence to look at things. So you start by having a less profound, you know, idea of your relevance, because your life is so transient and your time is so minuscule. And man himself is so short in the larger space of what God has created. The planet is so small in the larger cosmos. And as Vivekananda wrote, it is impossible to conceive that God is interested only in one part of the smallest of planets. So we don't really know too much. And so when people who tell me this is about God and this is religion, I was slightly cynical, saying, but how do you know? Who told you? And then I happened to read the question which Vivekananda put to Ramakrishna, which in a sense was a question I would have asked people if I could have asked somebody. That everybody talks about God. Have you seen him? And so when Ramakrishna answers saying, of course I have seen him, I see him much more intensely than I see you. That's when I pause and say, of all the philosophy about God that I've ever read, this is the only person who walks up and says, stop faffing. Tell me, have you seen what I'm talking about? And this person says to him, yes, I have. And there is no other Q&A of that sort that I have read before or after. Even after that, Vivekananda does not say at that moment, Master, you have said such a profound thing, where are your feet? Let me lie there. Vivekananda says later on, for 6 years, I battled my master every inch of the way, which is why I know him. And I mean, obviously you people have read about him, so I don't want to reiterate, but the whole phases of Vivekananda coming, then being ignored by Ramakrishna, coming back, so on and so forth. Ramakrishna did not take him in one go. Vivekananda didn't accept him in one go. So I found people who are talking about God directly, who were not, very quick to blindly believe and worship. And that gave me the scope to think that, between one extreme of saying, okay, you only live once, live it up, who cares, there is no tomorrow, so therefore it doesn't matter what you do, what you think, finally you'll be finished. And the other extreme saying, from morning, which side of the bed you get up at, and so on and so forth, everything is about being God-fearing. And God-fearing seemed a very irritating word to me, because in every faith, you look at God as a parent or as a protector. And, like that whole older classic, post Sholay people would, Sholay, for example, the line is used, right? If the child is mischievous, the mother will say, Gabbar aa jayega. Why do we pitch God like some gabbar who will come to reprimand me every time I do something wrong? I mean, why do I have to be God-fearing from the moment I start my day? If I say this, God will be angry. If I do this, God will be angry. That's a very angry headmasterish model of existence, but that's not the sentiment I have generally got about this topic. So one extreme, one is a nihilistic perspective you can have as you grow up, saying, what is all this? This is all superstition. It's just random books. Who has seen anything? And the other becomes, oh my God, I'm so scared. I hope I didn't cross a line. And please tell me, Guruji, what to do. And Guruji will tell him what to do. And all we do is obey. But learning is also about questioning. The student should also teach the teacher a little bit through his own questions and education. So Vivekananda and Ramakrishna inhabited that middle space, which was rational enough. Yes, there is something beyond this world, but was not naive or too self-indulgent. That, the earth is the center of the solar system, which it is not. My country is the center of this planet, which it is not. My guru is the only person who knows anything worth knowing. That may not necessarily be true. So they allowed you to be a cynic and yet a believer, and then find your own answers. And then many years later, when I began consuming the Gita in a slightly coherent format, and the narrative, the discussion between Arjuna and Krishna sort of seemed to align to that larger thought process. That even somebody who says, I am God incarnate, and so Krishna stands up in the battlefront and says, look at my Virat avatar. But then doesn't come back and say, having seen my Virat avatar, do you not understand how lowly a creature you are? So shut up and do what I'm saying. He still says, I explained to you something, the secret beyond all secrets, and now reflect on it and do as you choose. So that space, that that universe of how these things operate, he came into a mold where, without it being a conscious decision, he began to be the reference point for my questions. And the first thing he started off, and I started my book with that one line, I do not care for human health. And that was extremely disturbing, if you may say so, because when you say don't care for human health, that means you don't want human validation, which is a slightly non-intuitive thought as a teenager or while growing up. Then at some point he would say, I do not care who comes or who goes. He would say, the fear of the loss of money or anything else, I cannot bother about, and I will not. So between 16 to 2021, in that span, where the fear of loss is a very, very important part of life. I mean, did I lose 3 marks in the board examination is a very big fear. So the fear of loss is inherent to how we grow up, I think. The fear of death is inherent to how we start looking at life in the beginning. So you naturally have a lot of fear, and the validation of people and looking for support and help and feedback is very, very natural. And that's this point when you make 4 a.m. friends, you have groups, you have people who stand by you, and so on and so forth. So this person said, you can walk alone. You can have no human support. And it's still okay. And he began to say, and he began to write this in so many ways, that he who is afraid of loss always loses. So each time you were afraid of something, you began to say, if I'm afraid of this, maybe there's a stronger chance that I will actually lose it. And then practically, in very small ways, when you are driving a car fairly fast and something unexplained happens in front of you, you begin to realize that the fear of an accident paralyzes you, and that's more likely to lead to an accident. Whereas if you keep your nerves, you're more likely to have things under control. So in many, many ways, my actual everyday questions, my fears, my insecurity, my trauma, my need for validation, this is something he began to take out by the scattering of what all he was writing, as I discovered it. And as we heard earlier in the program, and I agree with that point, that you see him differently when at different points of time. As you grow older, as you face different challenges, because when you come into a career, you have very different battles. When you work reporting to somebody, you have a different dynamic. When you are reporting and you're the boss of somebody else, you're a different dynamic. In each of these, in the workplace, I began to realize that, Vivekananda is somebody who's answering my workplace question, and I was surprised at that. And so some 15, 16 years back, I wrote something on the edit page in Speaking Tree. It was titled Vivekananda, the Manager Monk. And I argued the case that he may not have run a company as a CEO, but he knew the problems, the questions, which are very universal. Just like fanaticism is just universal, it hasn't changed in 100 years. These things are also universal. And so over time, I began to say, at that stage, this person was probably my Dale Carnegie, in hindsight. Then 10 years later, I began to say, okay, this is probably my Stephen Covey, in hindsight. And it went from there onwards, till the point I realized that, all my other self-help reading has stayed largely, pristine, pure, without markings. But my Vivekananda book is in tatters. You buy a second copy and it so wears out with the highlighting and the marking. So that's when I thought maybe I should write something about this, because Vivekananda, the national icon, appeals to the PM and maybe to all of us who are looking at national growth. But my insecurity on a given day is not concerned with where the borders of India are. If I fear my death tomorrow, I want to understand, where do I go after I die? If I fear loss, I fear the loss of money, I fear the loss of stature, I fear the loss of so much. And then, then Vivekananda says, we are like sheep nibbling at grass on the way to the slaughterhouse. We take a break and we think things will change, but you'll head the same direction. And then at each stage, not relevant to you, all of you right now, but as a parent, I come on the other side of it. Because at one stage I'm worried about my board marks, and then one stage I understand that every parent is obsessed with the children's board marks. I said, this is a very cliched cycle. Like, when do we get out of this? And then through Vivekananda, I read Ramakrishna. And then he begins to say, treat the children like a nurse handles children in the hospital. Or like he would say, the nursemaid at a big zamindar house in Bengal, she takes the child and plays with it, and she says, okay, my hurry. But she knows this hurry is not hers. But she still handles the child with affection and care, without ownership. And that again taught a few things. That, if you cannot not use your children as this via media to live your own life's dreams, but understand, be a nurse, take care, but don't take ownership. And then in any other space, I don't know how many of us read in that space, but Vivekananda will say that we mistake something else for love very often. And he'll be very, very blunt, and he'll say, a man wants a woman to be his slave and wants to be her slave. And if she does anything which is against his wishes, it pains him. And that slavery he calls love. Then you pause and say, okay, this space is not a monk space, but is he saying something generally valid? And then you read the papers day after day after day after day. you realize that being jilted in love makes people bring out a knife or acid. And that's a very unusual modification of the love which quote unquote exists in the first place. So you begin to say, he has this very, very coherent grip on the pulse of human thought process. And maybe I need to read him in that space because he answers my questions very often. And I will leave the grander answers of the planet, of everything else which involves billions and millions of people working together, to grander minds. I'm content in solving my life's questions, which is what I have addressed to do. And therefore, I took some time to then stand back and say, how does Vivekananda help me in handling my own insecurities and my battles? How does he help me in handling my career and my work? And then how does he help me in handling others? Because too much of our life is governed by the views of others and the moods of others and the judgment of others. And too much of it is spent. Luckily, we grew up in a world without social media, so we didn't have to worry about likes and who's unfollowing us. But that whole space of your peer group, first hand, second hand. I mean, like LinkedIn says, okay, stage 1 connection and 2 and 3 and 4, this whole endless chain of the number of people whose views and opinions we have to factor in. I think he gives you a very refreshing space to be by yourself and not worry too much about the rest of the planet and work on your own growth. So that's the direction I have come from. And I'm more than happy to listen to what you have to say rather than ramble about it.
Yeah. As usual, so precise, so wonderful presentation from you, how Swamiji has helped you, or should I say, made way for a special Anshul, what he was 16 years ago, when he was 16 and now what he is.
I often so people say to me, Swamiji, that, so he guided you.
Yeah.
I said, that would make me a sheep. He validated me.
Yeah.
Because I could find no other validation. Everybody would say, Kya bakwas kar rahe ho? And this man says, no, this thought process is fine, do it. Yeah. So you're able to be arrogant without peer-to-peer support because of his thought process.
Yeah. Do you think he's like a gardener who has set things right for you, or trimmed certain things of the ego and the depth and the fearlessness kind of thing?
Swamiji, the interesting paradox is that the ego actually becomes bigger when you don't bother about anybody else in a different way.
Yeah.
Not in the need to, drive a big car or wear a gold chain or show off a visiting card. Not in that space. Not to say, oh, my gender, my religion, my language is superior to others. Not in that space. Yeah. But by being very comfortable with the absence of validation.
Yeah. How do you think the 21st century generation can derive a new path, a new guidance amidst the testing times? That there is turmoil, there's uncertainty, there is whether uncertainty of the colleges or the classes or the career. Do you think Swamiji can give them something, or should they go to him or study him properly?
So Swamiji, I have been occasionally in some discussions, people have said to me, don't you think you should be part of the syllabus? For example.
Yeah.
And I said, the one thing I don't like to do is being forced to do things. The one way to make a child stay away from something which he should be having is to force him to do it. Then the child rebels and says, okay, if you're making me do it, I will not consume this properly. So I don't remember what I read in my school textbooks. I read them for examination because I had to read them. Unless they connect to me very personally, that's very few things. So to give to anybody, the point of saying you need to read and this will help you, I don't know if it works, because again, as a 20-year-old or 18-year-old has no reason to take the words of a 40 or 50-year-old at face value and say this will help you, because they say, what do you know about our world? And that's happened generation to generation, right? We all say, and we all say, the older people, my life was very tough, yours was very easy. And they say, you have no idea. And we did with our parents and it'll go on. But Vivekananda is, how do I say? I think a friend from Bengal said to me that what your book did for me is it brought him down from the calendar hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
So now he's here next to me, otherwise he's always behind me and upstairs, but that's like the elders in the family. You go and you touch their feet, but they don't really come with you to the gym or to the movies.
Yeah.
So he said, he was something that he's so big, he's so deep, so profound that I want him there. I won't say he's not in my house, especially if I'm in Bengal. But, I can't bear to start those books because he goes into so many things. So I said, again, I'll come back to that person. I said, why don't you I mean, if you read through and you filter what he says, so Ramakrishna made the point to him. One, and he said this, my master said this to me hundreds of times, yet I often forget it. Be in no hurry to teach. First, have something to give. So then there Ramakrishna gave to him the parallel that when the flower is sort of, ready, the bees come of their own accord.
Yeah.
You can't take a plastic flower and put a bee on it and say, here, this is time for you. It will know, it's not connecting with me. This doesn't work for me by instinct. So I think all of us who are teachers in any system, in any profession, any place, we should not be in a hurry to teach. We should leave it there. Somebody wants to pick it, they will pick it. We should leave the thought and walk away and let the student decide. Because if Krishna could do that, if Ramakrishna could do that, who the hell are we to tell people, I have found the truth, I'll give it to you? It's very narcissistic. And when you teach with a sense of ego, that the student sort of knows one part of it, he'll be bored. He will not say to our face, but he will be bored. That's what I fear. The second part, which I'm coming to here, is that that Ramakrishna and Vivekananda's, maybe that is a good place to start, that dynamic. And frankly, I tell you one small thing, I don't want to sort of get into like, I have done some great work, because this is not, I'm not a professor, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a monk. So this is not something I do for a living. I did because I had a thought to convey. But like I say, if you want to bring him from the calendar to somewhere around you, maybe the book takes away the intimidation which some people might feel at the grandness of his theory. Oh, and to come back to the point I forgot as I was speaking to you, that in this whole discussion about how much to teach and how much to learn, Ramakrishna had made these points to Vivekananda that if you want to conquer or kill or invade an army, you need swords and shields and soldiers. And it's a bad parallel to give, but this is what he said. If you want to kill yourself, you only need a needle. You don't need swords and shields in an army.
Yeah.
So he said, if you want to teach the world, you have to, be that profound to answer every question of everybody out there. You want to teach yourself, you don't need that much. That needle is enough.
Yeah.
So I told this person, I found my needle. Baki, what he has in his armory, I'm sorry, there are bigger minds, they'll take it up. I don't mind. That's fine. So I don't have too much to teach beyond what I taught myself. The rest is just conversation.
Yeah. I will now invite Sandeep to give his observations, what you learned as a youngster from Bangalore. Sandeep can unmute and speak. Or it can be Suruchi Pandey, who has just now recited Swamiji's ideas, the Chicago speech. Couple of observations from the audience, from the student participation. Yeah, you can unmute. Okay, anybody else who can, who feel like asking a question or clearing their doubts from Anshulji is welcome.
So, either I have been very clear or completely confusing.
Pardon?
Either I have been very clear or completely confusing, since there are no questions.
Yeah. In fact, when I was reading, and I'm continuing to read that your writings, observations, lessons, you have taken mainly some of the, which we ourselves try to overlook from the letters of Swamiji. Especially, I loved that Hudson test, where Swamiji, I like that Hudson test, and then his surrender in Kshir Bhavani, and then your visit there subsequently. All that is it's like a painting for me. Though you are in the field, how he has managed the work culture and starting the organization at that time, not today when everything is available, communication is available, but that time how he wrote the letters, how he inspired people, his brother monks, and then his friends here and there, the struggles that he had. In fact, on 9th of September, Swamiji was nowhere. He lost the address. He came back from Boston, slept in the goods carriage in the Chicago station. Next day morning, no food, no wash, no proper communication, sitting on the footpath. Then how the higher call came when that lady opened the doors and sees this man is sitting on the footpath. She does not know him. He does not know her. But then the question is not, she did not ask, why are you sitting here? What do you want? Where are you from? She straight away asked, are you a delegate to the Parliament of Religions? That is still striking me even after 128 years. Are you a delegate to the Parliament of Religions? Swamiji was shocked. He said, yes, I am. Then why are you on the footpath? Say, that's my problem. I'm not able to go anywhere. People are not able to guide me properly because they are trying to tease me or throw me out. He says, come with me. So she takes him. He becomes their best family friend. Her daughters and cousins become his sisters. That Mary Hale conversation. And then the rest is history. How on 11 September, he is there waiting on stage for nearly 4 hours from morning 10 o'clock till 3:30. Not unable to speak, and then the history is created. So the letters of Swamiji, as you mentioned, you have took up certain very vital points which people tend to overlook. That was very, very inspiring. And can you share some thoughts on that for the my friends and others?
Swamiji, one part I realized that all of us, when we talk to a larger collective, we tend to watch what we say.
Yeah.
And you write one-to-one to somebody, you are more open. So I began to see that divergence. Suruchi, you finally have something to ask? Come.
Suruchi, come online, you can share something.
Yeah, so we keep learning about Swami Vivekananda, and we know that he's a great person. He was a great person, and there's a lot to learn from. But we look at us, all we do is like sit on our phones or social media or something like that. And in spite of knowing that we have to do something for the society, we don't take a step ahead. So how do we like go ahead, initiate the whole thing? How do we start with the first step?
Suruchi, I am slightly unorthodox in my approach on this point, because what you do for society, now, sometimes when we talk about that, and I had the sense as well when I was slightly younger, about I will go and solve other people's problems, which is giving ourselves a lot of importance. Because this is a word which Vivekananda used middle of his writings. He said the world is a moral gymnasium. So you do things there to make yourself stronger, not to help anybody. And from that perspective, when I thought about the phrase for many, many years, moral gymnasium. So one day I was having a chat with friends in the gym. And I said, when you pick up the dumbbells, is it a favor to the dumbbell? No, it isn't, right? You pick up a dumbbell because you want to be stronger. That's the only way you can be stronger. Because if you keep lying down on the floor the whole day, your muscles will atrophy. So you engage with those things to make yourself stronger. Don't expect a dumbbell to say thank you each time you give it back. So you give somebody something. It is you teaching yourself, I can manage without holding money. I can give some money away. You are not changing somebody's destiny by giving 100 rupees. That's not enough to anybody's life or a meal. That gesture is to remind you that maybe you should be looking beyond what you do. And if that person's, and I'll be, if that person is not destined to have that food, he'll still not have it. आप हाथ से दे सकते हो, मेरे हाथ से फिर गिर सकता है ना. So what is good, what is bad? This whole I will help, I will not help. And I mean, I don't know whether this is stuff for a letter or for a larger conversation, but good and bad, help, like I'm a police officer. One day I thought, okay, my father's in the police. So I would think, okay, when I grow up, I'll be this police officer and I will, keep everybody safe. And then when I did the mathematics, that one district has 45 lakh people. So even with the SSP with a gun, every night I will cover all 45 lakh people and keep them safe. Slightly difficult. I will try to do for my benefit, but if somebody in some city 50 kilometers away from where I am gets a bullet that day, I can investigate. I can't say I'll protect you. How can I protect? Be it SP, DIG, that's very narcissistic. How do I know I will not get the first bullet before I can protect you? So this, and I'm not saying it's a bad reflex. All I'm saying is it's not the only thing. So let us say Vivekananda would make this, he had this perspective on what he called the hard-shelled Christians in America. The ones who did not like the, non-regular teachings and this guy from outside saying all sorts of stuff, which people are liking. So there's this point where Vivekananda sort of makes fun of that school of thought. He said, so I don't want to be a preacher like that, where, so this ship hits an iceberg somewhere and begins to sink. and there's a priest on the ship, and people run around to him saying, Father, we are about to die. Do something for us. And Father thinks for a while, takes out his hat and starts a collection. So you say that's all that he's just taught him. Take out a hat, collect money. But the ship is sinking. What are we going to do with these coins? But that's what his religion was. Help means give cash. I will give you. By collecting coins in a hat, you will go to Jesus. Is it that cheap? Then Bezos will go before you. What buffet has gone to God already? How much can I give? I have nothing to give. So this delusion, we are giving. We go to Tirupati, we give 1 crore ka, whatever. But God created those diamonds from carbon. He doesn't need your diamonds. It's your gesture. Fine, you said something. So whether you are helping God, if I get 5 more marks, I will give you 2 rupees ka laddu. I mean, are you serious? What butter is this? It's too ROI. There's no ROI for this. It's too cheap. Or you'll help people. Mandir ke bahar mein khana de dunga. I'll fund somebody's education. You can fund somebody's literacy. Education is of their own free will. If they want to educate, they'll have educated. Whereas somebody who's not gone to school without your funding, like a Lincoln, may know enough to write the Gettysburg Address. So I know what you're saying, and I know where you're coming from. I'm just saying I've been there and said, मैं कुछ समाज के लिए करूंगा. And I realized कि अपना सोना जागना खाने का तो दिमाग रहता नहीं है. समाज के लिए बाहर जाकर क्या करोगे? एक दिन का फैड आएगा, शाम को बोलोगे थक गया, 2 दिन की ब्रेक ले रहा समाज सेवा से. How's it going to work? So you have to work on yourself, I think. And as for want of a better word, the phrase which came in, first build character, that is the highest duty you can perform.
Yeah.
And then he said, once you are there, quote unquote, they will all come. So I wrote there, when Vivekananda went to the USA, did he have a PR company sending out press notes to the American papers? Today, a celebrity spends 5,000 rupees to go to an event to give 500 rupees. Then send me 5 pictures. Mr. So-and-so went and spent half an hour helping the needy. I said, your PR bill is 5,000 rupees. The needy you have 500 rupees. नेकी का दरिया में डाल, नेकी का सर पे रख, फोटो खींचा, पब्लिक में भेज. ऐसी नेकी क्यों कर रहे भाई? It's better you work on this. Maybe in conversation with a friend, you're able to convey a thought which is more valuable than saying, oh, I'll get you a new handbag. So the exchange of thought, it's not social service. Yeah. And holding a mic and saying, children, you need to do this. What year? You're 3 years old. Have you done anything because you're told you need to do? Have you ever done anything like that because you were told you need to do it? That's the one way to make sure you will never do it. You must want to do it. So why do you have to make religion so boring, abstract, theoretical, like a college class which you have to, fill the form for? So therefore I say this person's religion was radical. I didn't have to become a smaller person to embrace this religion, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think that's the point. And so when you say we should do, if you are hungry, it will come to you. If you're not hungry, all of us giving lessons for 2 months will not help. All that these things do is, like I'm saying, it's a trigger. So I read something and it triggers me. You hear something, it triggers you. But a trigger and the other part, you have to have 2 elements which are in sync. I can throw a match in petrol, I can throw a match in water, different reactions. The match is similar. I can't control what the tub is filled with. I throw the match. Some will light, some will take the match and sink it and finish whatever is left in it. To each his own. Why am I responsible? I am not, your keeper, you're not my keeper. So my dilemma actually is, if any of us have the George Clooney moment in Gravity, you cut yourself away, your time is running out. And you're drifting alone, literally in the cosmos, knowing you're going to die. And that's when I say, you are not going to be buried, you're not going to be burnt. You're just going to stay here. There's going to be no service for you. There's no body to play with. But you still die, right? Now, what is your thought at that point? Is the cosmos at that time coming to you? Is Yamaraj coming and saying, excuse me, I want proof of identity, give me your Aadhaar card. Are you Hindu, Christian, Muslim? Are you from Earth or from somewhere else? Because now you're in space. You could be from Mars for all I care. So, all that branding and all can happen at its own pace, but individually, when you come and your time is up, what have you done? Are you ready for stage 2? Do you want to come back? Because, growing up is very painful. All these childhood years, I mean, the biggest argument to avoid rebirth, I think, is going to school.
Yeah.
To be born each time and to be told for 12 years ki ye khade ho, ye karo, I'm done with this war. So I want moksha to get out of the cycle
Yeah.
and my appraisals. So that's the space I am coming from. That what is religion? मतलब दाएं हाथ खा रहे हो, बाएं हाथ खा रहे हो, समाज में सेवा करो, कर लो, मन करता है तो. But for that you don't need institution. You don't need Swamiji saying to you go and do it. Like we heard earlier, right? Somebody outside the gate of the establishment giving 2 bananas. That's service. Why do you have to quantify, and what is the need for that discussion? That should never need to be discussed. Whether you help or you harm, it's between you and your maker. When the tsunami happened, I read about, as a story, I read about something about a daughter of 2 fishermen, a family, and the family was, was out fishing that day. And so it's like a 3-month-old baby. Everybody died. She was left completely orphaned. NGOs came in, picked up. In India, frankly, the rule book is so difficult to adopt. I mean, that's a different story. That girl 1 year later was in Norway. I said, her parents dying, the best thing which happened to her. At 1 year, she's going to start life in Norway. It never happened if she had a happy family here. Just think of it. And she wouldn't know the pain because she didn't see anything. So, what is help? I don't know. Like materially helping, I will support you, I'll give you a house, I'll give you a flat, I'll give you something. This giving model, and what Swamiji referred to the lesson at Khir Bhavani.
Yeah.
After which, as Swamiji remember, he said the idea of building buildings and mutts and missions, I have given up. So the building is not the point. This is not the papacy. This is not the Vatican. You're not saying I am the person presenting God here, but has God given the certificate? You show me the signature, else I don't believe you, because Ramakrishna said this. So unless somebody else says to me, yes, God sent me here, I don't take it face value. I say, he sent me as much as he sent you. I'll teach you. What is the big deal? Why are you teaching me? Show me your CV. Because the color can change, no? With all due regards to the formal system, you can wear saffron and teach. In some country, you can wear white and teach. Some country, you can wear black and teach. And this is assuming the earth is the sum total of what God made, which is not how it works for me astronomically. So maybe there are people out there who think we are idiots and they're wondering when we'll understand things. And they're waiting for that stage to come to reach here. So I'm not, it's like saying, if you say I'll help people, it's like saying I'll travel the world. So what you'll travel the world means what? The world is a 24-hour flight. You know nothing of the world. Travel the world is now what business is trying to do. Or what, Branson is trying to do. And once you travel 9 planets, then come back and talk to me. You can do nothing of traveling here. So what is this self-delusion? I have traveled the world. In the profession I come from, we call somebody Miss Universe. मतलब universe आपने देखा है, मतलब क्या होता है? This is fine. It's for your delusion. You can say, yeah, I am this. So we can all say, I'm saving the world. The world didn't need you. After you die 100 years later, nobody will remember this discussion. What are you helping? Whom are you helping? If you can help me give me immortality, that's useful. So the Buddha's questions, right? Will I get old? The guy says yes. Depressing answers each time. Will I get sick? Yes. Will I die? Yes. Give me these 3 solutions, then you're helping me. Baki all is faff. Can't I earn my own money? Why would I take it from you? Big deal. That's my perspective. Yeah. Who else?
Anshul, one interesting question, observation. I'll just read that for you. Yeah. It says it's from Anusha Hegde, who is in Punjab University. As a journalist, the pursuit of truth is the highest ethic practiced by anyone. How did Vivekananda's principles guide your journalistic practice, especially when you have to tell the truth boldly?
I have not attempted to identify myself with my visiting card. So frankly, my point is that whether I am a university teacher, a journalist, or I sell sweets in Old Delhi, it should make no difference to my stature or ability to understand the man. Because my life and death questions don't depend on my profession. So I don't think that, I have any greater commitment to truth as a journalist than I would have in any other professional vocation of life, because that's elevating my job to something slightly superior and classier, which I don't think is the case in any line. And apart from that, in the daily battles that you face while doing work, what happens in a journalism system, the challenges are more public, so you can see what is happening. Maybe if you work in MNC and you are the chief financial officer, and the company is submitting fraud bills for tax exemptions. There also, if you raise that, that's a fight for truth, except that it's not in the public domain. It's happening within your company. You may get sacked or whatever, somebody may take cognizance of it. The whistleblower model. So I don't want to bring to my profession any sole higher moral ground or halo of being the custodians of truth. But in any decision making that you take, any place where you, the one thing which Vivekananda comes to is he asks you to let it go if it goes. Which in a little space is, if something which I think I should do, if it costs me my job, let it go. Let the job go if it comes to that. You take decision based that. It's like being a police officer, right? And so if I arrest this big man, I mean, maybe a Manoj Bajpayee from Shul or somewhere else, the government will come after me. And you live with that. Yes, it will come after me. Maybe they'll suspend me. Maybe they'll arrest me. And the obsessive person would say, no, my job should stay. My salary should stay. My office cabin should stay. I should do something which will upset somebody. And then I could be losing this. There he teaches you very early, the fear of loss is overrated. If it has to go, it will go in any case. So I think you decide things slightly easier because, like I'm saying, you will lose your body, right? So what are you going to hold on to?
You mean to say it gave you kind of boldness to face the society or to face the reality?
Yeah, that's roughly the right word. That, I'll do it on my terms.
Yeah.
Good or bad. And what is the worst that can happen? Like if somebody says, oh, if you do this, maybe I'm making a film. And people say people don't like the topic of this film. They'll burn the theater. They'll stop your release. You will lose money. So okay, I lose money. So
very
that
challenging.
way. Which also means you don't end up retiring with a Rolls Royce, which is fine.
Yeah. That is a real solid message. Anyway, Sandeep, your observations from.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It was a very insightful speech. And like normally we would have studied Swamiji in a conventional way or a traditional way, but it was very unique way to understand Swamiji on practical experience. One more thing, like I was amazed about, how the evolution of understanding Swamiji took place from Dale Carnegie, Stephen Covey to much more broader extent. It was a great learning for all of us. Now I am very curious to go through your literature work on Swamiji. And thank you, sir, for encapturing all your learnings on Swamiji, which will help us to know more about him.
Give me something critical. Say something critical. Don't be afraid of Swamiji present here.
No, actually,
not fear loss. Be combative. Say what you want to say.
Yeah. No, only that I was thinking how you relate Dale Carnegie, Stephen Covey, and such people to Swamiji. Then I got my answer in your speech.
In fact, see, Dale is the exact opposite. So I count Vivekananda as the antithesis of Dale and Paulo.
Yeah.
Because Dale says, if you want to be on good terms with somebody else, pretend to like what they like. You want to go to do a sales pitch? Go to the man's cabin, see his photographs. He has a golf photo, talk about golf. He has a grandson, say his grandson looks very pretty. ऐसे इतना झूठ बोल रहा है एक बिजनेस के लिए, नहीं कमाओ यार, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? I mean, it's managing, but Vivekananda says, say what you have to say, and let him never give you your business for the rest of your life. How does it matter? Everything is transient. So there is, if I may use the wrong word, there is a certain swag to the Vivekananda model. Dale Carnegie model is, yes, the client is always right. I'm sorry, take your business and walk. I don't want it. What will happen? वैसे भी मतलब shut down economy का, ठीक है. The reverse, that Stephen Covey, when you compare him to say Dale, the point is you say, okay, Dale is the personality ethic. Work on the guy's, whatever interest, inclination, and Stephen says it's a character ethic. As a leader, you have to behave in a certain way. You have to do things a certain way, and the ethic of your conduct is more important than the business result that quarter. Which essentially is, do not have fear of loss. I mean, fear of loss is very tangible. If you're a CEO and your sheet is in the red, that is loss, literally loss, right? How many rupees? Baki to notional loss hai. Your friend stopped talking to you. Big deal. Emotional loss, you can rectify. Financial loss is in the bank. Doesn't change naturally. So that comfort level with loss, I think, is a very aggressive way of living. Last, I have always made the point to people that Paulo's perspective saying the universe conspires to give you what you want. I've been trying for 30 years. It doesn't work, believe me. So stop waiting for that conspiracy to come true. Learn to understand that not everything happens the way you want. Our problem with life, from the beginning is we are taught that you have to tick all the boxes. That beta, you have to get that seat, you have to get that mark, you have to get here, and while class 12, college, then the job thing, then the appraisal. Every single time we are trained, run, use your elbow, push the other guy out, come in front of him. The one who gets in is the achiever, the rest are losers. Or you couldn't do that, beta. So what has the person gained? He's gained something by being a smaller person. What is the big deal about? Let it go.
Yeah.
So this guy came to Ramakrishna. I'm assuming you've read the story. I'll keep it in 30 seconds. The person who wanted to learn more things from Ramakrishna, which is slightly occult, and Ramakrishna refused to do that. The disciple went off. I'm sure Swamiji would have some disciples who get angry with the Guru and say, no, I have bigger plans than what you can give me. He goes off and he comes back 10, 15 years later and says, come with me to the river next to Dakshineshwar. He takes them. Vivekananda goes with him. And the man walks on water, literally, and says, see, this is what I have done. I can walk on water. And Ramakrishna says, beta, for this, I pay the boatman 1 paisa. Why would you waste 10 years for this?
Yeah.
So that going ahead to what? Are you going ahead to immortality? So then why do all the drama? Na? Just get with the basics, sort your own mind, other things will come. This competitive, elbowing people, abusing people, I am the grandest, being a King Kong gorilla beating your chest all the time in the jungle saying I am a great person, that is not a religion. That's also not Vivekananda. We tend to say, oh my God, proud. That the word proud has so many, there's the whole drum in the background. Ramakrishna was not dancing around and saying, look, I'm Superman. He was what he was. And he saw God. So get there, and be calm. That's the space I come from.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Sandeep can think about organizing a kind of interaction with Anshul for the Bangalore boys.
Vishwanath, do you have a question?
Yes, Swamiji. Will do.
Vishwanath put up his hand and then went away.
Yeah. And I'll just take a impression from one of the senior faculty of Vivekananda
Yes,
College.
you are putting people's hands down. That could be possible.
Pardon?
I hope you are not putting the hands of people down. There are too many questions.
Kameshwari ma'am, are you there? We'll just take the last point. Yeah, one second. Yeah, you can unmute now and share your feelings, and you can unmute. You have to unmute. Yes.
Swamiji, pranams.
Pranam.
Today, a very memorable day in the history of India. At the same time, I have heard all the speeches in the sense I have heard Subramanyam ji, I have heard Anshul ji, and now sitting and hearing to all this, I once again went back to my teachings where I teach students second language Hindi. And last year we had a lesson on Swami Vivekananda. There were talks about universality in that. There was about Charitra Nirman, that is character building. And now when I hear to Anshul ji and when I heard in the morning Bala Subramanyam ji, I feel that these people have not gone through those lessons, but in the sayings, in whatever they are saying, all those teachings are there. So it is up to us how we relate, how we, how we understand the things and then put into practice. And if we at this stage are hearing to all these things, in the future, we will also give these tips to our students. And what we are trying to practice, the ethics and moral values to the students will surely come true. And as you said, sir, that first we have to start from ourselves. The charity begins at home. There is a saying. In the same way, first we have to inculcate all these habits so that we can inculcate or tell about these things to our students. And it was a very nice and sober talk, the way Anshulji has spoken the truth. Though he is from, journalism background, yeah, but the way he speaks also says that जहाँ पे भी वो है वो एकदम सही उसका उसका क्या कहूँ कि सही काम कर रहे हैं, और साथ साथ हमारे जो विद्यार्थी इनको सुनेंगे तो जरूर इनसे प्रभावित होकर अपने जीवन में इन सारी चीजों को अमल करेंगे। ये मेरा कहना है, और धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
We can have a conversation with Anshul and your students also.
That's what I was thinking, स्वामी जी, कि एक बार और आपने हम लोगों को बाल सुब्रमण्यम जी से परिचय करवाया. We had him in our FDP program, and now अंशुल चतुर्वेदी जी से आपने हमारा परिचय करवाया, तो next we will have him on our platform.
No, you see, wonderful people are there, and the youth are there who need the right food at the right time from such who have really
Yes.
grown through Swamiji's lectures, especially the letters of Swamiji. As Anshulji said, Swamiji was philosophical, was kind of the rational, scientific in the lectures, okay, Grana Yoga, Karma Yoga and others. But in the letters, there's something else that the students need to know, and the youngsters need to probe on and build up their life. In one of his conversations, I remember listening, it is not what you have or what you will be, but rather what you are, what you grow inside out. That kind of small, sensitive touch has to be given. And then the peace and strength in students will come. One student, a young person, is raising his or her hand always. Prithvi, you want to say something or ask something? You can unmute, please. This will be the last question or last observation. Prithvi? Prithvi, I don't know. Are you there? Anyway. Okay. So on behalf of all of you, I have no words to say, just convey my love and affection to Anshul ji, joined us live from New Delhi, and we'd like to listen to him more and interact with him in the future. And on behalf of all of you, I convey my greetings to him and thank him. More of a brotherly kind, a friend of the Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence, and would be a great support and lessons to the youngsters who join our courses. So it's been a very, very wonderful treat of ideas from you and from Bala Subramanyam. You have taken us in a different direction, different thought process of studying Swamiji in a new perspective through your book and through the conversations that we have had now. So I can only thank you and look forward for more interactions and more insights on that.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anshulji.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaskar.
So we'll end our short program with a small bhajan as a closing song. We started with a song, Veera Senapati, and we shall take up one more song and conclude the webinar for today, and invite all of you to join us for the webinar tomorrow at 11 o'clock after this song is over. 1 second.
World is a history of few men who had faith in themselves. That faith calls out the divinity within. All the great prophets, saints and seers of the world, what did they do? In one span of life, they lived the whole life of humanity. I believe that India will awake again. If anyone could, with all his heart, could love the people of its country, bereft of the grace of affluence, downtrodden, ever starved, quarrelsome and envious, India needs the sacrifice of at least 1,000 of her men, minds, and not brutes.
विवेकानन्दुनि सिंहगर्जनं भारतयुवता विनुवा वज्रपातमिति अग्निमन्त्रमिति वज्रपातमिति अग्निमन्त्रमिति మంత్రమిది దివ్య తేజమిది కనుమా శక్తి పుంజమిది కనుమా వివేకానందుని సింహగర్జనం భారత యువత వినుమా వజ్రపాతమిది అగ్ని మంత్రమిది దివ్య తేజమిది కనుమా శక్తి పుంజమిది కనుమా ఇనుప కండరాల ఉప్పు నరమ్ములు వజ్ర సంకల్పము వలెనోయ్
కండరాల ఉక్కు నరమ్ములు వజ్ర సంకల్పము వలెనోయ్
బలమే జీవనము ధైర్యమే మృత్యువు
బలమే జీవనము ధైర్యమే మృత్యువు
పిరికి రోదని కవలదోయ్ పిరికి రోదని కవలదోయ్ వివేకానందుని సింహగర్జనం భారత యువత వినుమా వజ్రపాతమిది అగ్ని మంత్రమిది దివ్య తేజమిది కనుమా శక్తి పుంజమిది కనుమా
శక్తి సర్వస్వము నీలో నిక్షిప్తము సకలం నీకు సంభవము
శక్తి సర్వస్వము నీలో నిక్షిప్తము సకలం నీకు సంభవము
ఆది పరాశక్తి అమృత పుత్ర
ఆది పరాశక్తి అమృత పుత్ర
ఆదమరచిని కనిదుర పోకుమా
ఆదమరచి కనిదురపోకుమా
ఉత్తిష్ట భారతదెంబా యువత
ఆత్మశ్రద్ధతో పదముందుకొనిక ఉత్తిష్ట భారతలెమ్మా యువత
ఆత్మశ్రద్ధతో పద ముందుకుని
సంఖ్యలను ఛేదించు బంధాలను ఖండించు స్వామీజీ దీవెన వినుమా నిజ దివ్యత్వము కనుమా నిజ దివ్యత్వము కనుమా వివేకానందుని సింహగర్జనం భారత యువత వినుమా వజ్రపాతమిది అగ్ని మంత్రమిది దివ్య తేజమిది కనుమా శక్తి పుంజమిది కనుమా దివ్య తేజమిది కనుమా శక్తి పుంజమిది కనుమా
The history of the world.
So that was the message. Though the song is in Telugu, it contains the entire life building, character building message and how the youth of India should awake. That is the summary of that song, beautifully choreographed by a music group from Bengaluru. And we take leave of every one of you. And from today till the next 364 days of 11th September again, it is not just one day program, it is a life turning program. We have to work on the ideas and the ideals for which Swamiji stood and build up our personal life and then make our society more peaceful and more living, as Swamiji said, resurgent India. So we take leave of you with Asatoma Sadgamaya Stotra. And those who have participated for today's session, there is a small message from our office for downloading the e-certificate for today's program. Please follow that and get your participation certificate for today. Okay. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrutyorma amrutangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May Swamiji bless all of us. Thank you. Namaste. We leave the meeting.